At 1437 on November 26, 1943, high above the industrial heartland of Bremen, Germany, Sergeant Frank "Lucky" Miller grips the controls of his B-17G flying fortress, the Iron Maiden. Flak has just torn through engine number 3, sending shrapnel ripping into the fuselage. A sudden lurch, a violent shudder, and the roar of 3 remaining engines is deafening. He has no idea that the true horror is yet to begin, a 500-mile odyssey across enemy territory with a crippled bird and a dwindling crew. The air inside the cockpit is thin and cold, despite the warmth of his flight suit. The rhythmic thrum of the engines, usually a comforting lullaby, is now punctuated by the ominous clatter of loose metal and the whine of stressed airframe. Miller's eyes, though tired from hours of intense concentration, scan the instrument panel, then dart to the gaping hole in the wing where engine 30 once roared. Smoke, thick and oily, streams back, momentarily obscuring the tail gunner's position. The controls feel sluggish, heavy, as if the bomber itself is fighting against its inevitable descent. A quick glance at his co-pilot, Lieutenant Thompson, reveals a face etched with grim determination, mirroring his own. This was not a drill. This was the reality of aerial warfare over Nazi Germany, and they were now alone, deep behind enemy lines. Flashback to a dusty farm in Iowa, 1941. Frank Miller, a quiet mechanic with a knack for engines, dreams of flying. His childhood was spent amidst the rhythmic pulse of farm machinery, the smell of oil and gasoline a familiar comfort. He possessed an innate understanding of how complex mechanisms worked, a gift that allowed him to diagnose and fix problems with an almost uncanny intuition. This quiet determination, a resilience forged in the demanding cycles of agricultural life, would serve him well in the crucible of war. He enlisted in the Army Air Forces, drawn by the allure of flight and a deep sense of patriotic duty after the devastating attack on Pearl Harbor. His journey took him from the flat plains of Iowa to the rigorous B-17 flight school in Florida, a world away from his rural upbringing. Here, he quickly earned a reputation for his calm under pressure and his almost spiritual connection to the massive bombers. The B-17, with its formidable defenses, 13.5 caliber machine guns, and 4 powerful Wright Cyclone engines, each generating 1,200 horsepower, was the backbone of the daylight bombing campaign. It was a symbol of American industrial might and the unwavering hope of a nation. The Iron Maiden, a specific B-17G with a painted pinup girl on its nose, became his second home, a fortress in the sky. He knew the stakes were immense. Every bomber lost meant more families grieving, more resources wasted, and a longer, more brutal war. Frank understood that his crew, his chosen family in the sky, depended on his skill and judgment for their very lives. He had meticulously studied every system, every emergency procedure, every rivet and wire, preparing for a day he hoped would never come. He knew the B-17's strengths and weaknesses intimately, a knowledge that would soon be tested to its absolute limits. The camaraderie among the crew was palpable, a silent pact forged in shared danger and the common goal of returning home. The initial bombing run over Bremen was a nightmare of smoke, fire, and deafening explosions. The air, usually crisp and clear at altitude, was now thick with the acrid smell of cordite, burning metal, and aviation fuel. German flak batteries, more accurate and numerous than ever, peppered the sky with deadly precision. Black puffs of anti-aircraft fire blossomed around them, each one a silent, deadly threat. Fighter attacks from swarms of sleek Focke-Wulf FY-90s and agile Messerschmitt Bf-199s were relentless, their cannons spitting 20mm shells and machine guns chattering. The Iron Maiden took hit after hit, the sound of tearing metal and shattering glass echoing through the fuselage, a symphony of destruction. Suddenly, engine Tounder sputtered violently, coughed, and then died, its propeller slowly windmilling to a halt, a stark contrast to the roaring power of its counterparts. Now, only 2 operational engines remained, their combined thrust barely enough to maintain altitude. The bomber, heavy with its remaining bomb load and accumulating battle damage, began to fall out of formation, a lone, vulnerable target in the vast, hostile sky. The protective embrace of the combat box was gone. Radio contact was lost, the antenna severed by a direct flak hit, plunging them into an eerie silence broken only by the wind and the strained engines. Navigator Lieutenant Thompson, a meticulous man from Boston, struggled with damaged instruments, his charts smeared with oil and sweat, his compass spinning erratically. Their course home, usually a precise calculation, was now a perilous guess across hundreds of miles of enemy territory. Fuel gauges dropped alarmingly, the remaining engines guzzling precious gas at an unsustainable rate. The crew battled small fires that erupted in the bomb bay and radio compartment, using extinguishers with practiced efficiency, the chemical smell mixing with the stench of smoke. Wounded gunners, including the normally jovial Sergeant Rodriguez, were tended to by the medic, their faces pale with pain and shock, their cries muffled by oxygen masks. Anything not essential. Spare ammunition, damaged equipment, even personal belongings like photos and letters, was jettisoned through the open bomb bay doors to lighten the load, a desperate attempt to gain precious altitude and speed. The cold, thin air rushed past the open wounds in the fuselage, a constant reminder of their precarious situation. But first, Miller had to keep the Iron Maiden from tearing itself apart in the turbulent, flak-riddled air, a task that demanded every ounce of his skill, courage, and an almost superhuman will to survive. The weight of his crew's lives pressed down on him, a burden heavier than any bomb load. With 2 engines gone, the B-17 was a flying brick, a testament to its robust design, but now pushed beyond its intended limits. The airframe groaned under the strain, protesting every maneuver. Miller, drawing on every ounce of his mechanical intuition and training, attempted a desperate maneuver, feathering the propellers of the 2 dead engines to reduce drag. This was a technique rarely successful in combat, often leading to catastrophic engine fires or structural failure due to the immense forces involved. The bomber shuddered violently as the propellers slowly rotated to their minimum drag position, the remaining 2 engines screaming in protest, their vibrations shaking the entire aircraft. Miraculously, the Iron Maiden stabilized, but barely, its airspeed dangerously low, its nose pointed slightly upwards in a constant struggle against gravity. The crew held their breath, a collective sigh of relief sweeping through the cramped fuselage, quickly followed by renewed tension. Their reprieve was short-lived. Suddenly, a squadron of sleek, deadly Bf-199s appeared on the horizon, their distinctive silhouettes growing rapidly larger. They were drawn to the crippled B-17 like sharks to blood, sensing weakness. Their silver wings glinted menacingly in the weak winter sun, a chilling harbinger of renewed attack. The remaining gunners, Sergeant Rodriguez, despite his wounds, and the stoic Corporal Davies in the tail, unleashed a torrent of .50 caliber fire. The roar of their machine guns was a defiant challenge, tracer rounds arcing through the sky, a deadly ballet of light and lee. 2 enemy fighters, caught in the concentrated fire, exploded in fiery blossoms, their wreckage spiraling down into the gray clouds below, leaving trails of black smoke. It was a temporary reprieve, a testament to the B-17's legendary defensive firepower and the sheer courage of its gunners. What they didn't know was that the German fighters were merely probing, reporting their position to a larger formation, a seasoned staffel led by a decorated Luftwaffe ace, Hauptmann Erich Hartmann, known as the Black Devil of the Skies. The true test of Miller's skill and the Iron Maiden's resilience, a battle for survival against overwhelming odds, was yet to come. The cold, unforgiving North Sea lay ahead, a vast expanse of dark water offering no sanctuary, only the promise of a watery grave if they failed. Every minute was a struggle, every mile a victory. The final confrontation erupted with terrifying suddenness over the churning gray expanse of the North Sea. A massive swarm of German fighters, at least 30 strong, descended upon the lone B-17. They were a mix of Bf-19s and the more heavily armed FW-19s, their pilots eager to claim an easy kill, their engines screaming a predatory song. Miller, with only 1 engine now coughing intermittently, its exhaust trailing a thin, ominous stream of black smoke, pushed the Iron Maiden to its absolute limits. He executed a series of violent evasive maneuvers, throwing the massive bomber through the sky with a skill that defied its size and damage. He used every cloud bank, every patch of turbulent air, every trick he'd ever learned in flight school and in countless previous missions. He pulled the yoke back, forcing the B-17 into a steep climb, then slammed it forward into a terrifying dive, trying to shake his pursuers. The remaining gunners, their faces grim with determination, fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Their ammunition was running dangerously low, each burst of .5 caliber fire, precious, carefully aimed. Tracer rounds from the enemy fighters stitched across the fuselage, tearing new holes in the already battered airframe, the sound like a giant zipper ripping through metal. A direct hit tore through the tail section, sending shrapnel ripping through the compartment and wounding Davies, the tail gunner, who slumped over his guns, still clutching the triggers, his last conscious act one of defiance. Miller, against all odds, managed to nurse the bomber through the gauntlet, weaving and diving, the single remaining engine roaring a defiant, desperate song, a testament to American engineering and human will. The German fighters, low on fuel and frustrated by the B-17's stubborn refusal to die, eventually broke off their attack, disappearing back into the eastern sky, their mission unfulfilled. The Iron Maiden, a shattered hulk, its wings riddled with holes, its fuselage scarred and torn, its landing gear jammed, limped towards the English coast. The sight of the white cliffs of Dover, faint but unmistakable on the horizon, brought a wave of profound relief and exhaustion to the surviving crew. At 18:12, after 3 hours and 35 minutes of sheer terror, Miller guided the bomber to a controlled crash landing in a muddy field near Ipswich. The landing gear collapsed, the wings dug into the soft earth, and the fuselage groaned and twisted, but it held. All surviving crew members, battered and bruised but miraculously alive, emerged from the wreckage, their faces streaked with oil, blood, and tears of relief. They had flown 512 miles on one engine, a feat of unparalleled airmanship, courage, and sheer will, a story that would be whispered in briefing rooms for generations. Frank Miller, hailed as a hero, was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for his extraordinary courage and skill, a medal he wore with quiet pride. He continued to fly combat missions, completing his tour of duty and returning to the United States, his experiences forever etched into his soul. He was a quiet man, forever marked by the war, but also by the unbreakable bonds forged in the terrifying, lonely skies over Germany. The Iron Maiden, though beyond repair, became a legend within the 8th Air Force. Its story passed down from crew to crew, a testament to the resilience of its men and the rugged, almost indestructible design of the B-17. Its battered remains were eventually salvaged, a silent monument to its final flight. Miller's story, and countless others like it, cemented the B-17's legacy as the flying fortress, a symbol of American grit, determination, and technological prowess in the face of overwhelming odds. His actions, and those of his crew, became a beacon of hope and inspiration, reminding everyone that even in the darkest hours, the human spirit could push beyond its limits to achieve the impossible. The lessons learned from such harrowing missions contributed significantly to advancements in aircraft design, crew training, and tactical strategies, ultimately shortening the war and saving countless lives. The roar of a single engine carrying a crippled bomber home against all odds became an enduring echo of courage and sacrifice in the annals of aviation history, a story that continues to inspire. Miller himself, in his later years, would often look up at the sky, a faint smile playing on his lips, remembering the Iron Maiden and the men who flew her home.